If you fail to understand, then the same incredible terror that's menacing me will strike at you!
Hey guys, I'm not quite sure what's going on with my camera. Just give me 1 second. Oh, fuck. Okay. Sorry about that. We had a little bit of a technical problem. That's fine. Nobody saw it because there are a few people here. Hey, why don't you announce yourselves? I don't know what was going on with my camera. It was just really bizarre. But there's 6 people here. And I kind of wasn't thinking when I scheduled this during the DNC. I think a lot of people are probably watching it, but that's fine. I have a short chapter I wanted to read tonight. So for those of you who are just pulling up, thank you very much. Let's just go over, there's a couple of things that have been on my mind that I kind of want to share with you. So we'll just call them food for thought. And we'll just tread some water until people show up. So the other day I saw, you know me, I'm always leaning into controversial stuff. The other day I saw a text from somebody that said they had worked for the GO, the Guardian's office, the precursor to Scientology's dirty tricks operation, secret police, OSA, the Office of Special Affairs. And this person was referring to a certain high-ranking OSA member, I'm not going to get into names, and was saying that they absolutely knew about something because of their position at OSA. So there's 2 things I wanted to say about that. And I'm not trying to defend anybody or impugn anybody. What I'm trying to do is bring some truth and understanding, because when people say that, well, so-and-so, that person knew because of their position, it reflects a complete lack of understanding of how Scientology organization works. Just bear with me. I'll explain this to you. So 2 things. One, the person was in the Guardian's office. That's fine. The individual that they were speaking about wasn't even in the organization they were referring to when they were in the Guardian's office. The other thing is, when this person was in the Guardian's office, was during the Snow White operation, there were 2,000 people in the Guardian's office. So God knows that all 2,000 of those people, many of them didn't know the individual they were speaking of. But here's the deal. There is a policy in Scientology, an organizational policy called post-responsibility. And in that policy, it very specifically says, if something happens in your area, if something blows up in your area, it's your responsibility to handle it in your area and not let it rise up to higher, as they say, on the org board or on the lines of your seniors or so forth. So when there's some kind of a problem happens locally, there's a concerted effort to make sure that higher ups don't know. And it's one of the ways that everybody, even people at the top, are very siloed in Scientology. So, for example, let's say that you were the ethics officer or the chaplain at Celebrity Center or the Advanced Org of Los Angeles, and you had a female public come in and say that they were being attacked in a particular way. The person's name was Danny Masterson, and we all know what I'm referring to. There would have been a concerted effort to make sure that that didn't leave Celebrity Center. Like, you wouldn't sit there and go, oh, well, OSA needs to know about this, I better write it up. As a matter of fact, if you couldn't handle that locally, if that rose to the level of becoming legal or becoming police business, then the people up there would know about it. And you would be, as they say in Scientology, especially in the Sea Org, you would be toast. So when I hear somebody say, well, they must have known because they were the head of it, they knew everything. It's completely, that is so false. And it's not just that I'm familiar with that policy. When I was working at the international base during the Lisa McPherson fiasco, and the heads of OSA and David Miscavige were all in Clearwater handling that thing. There was a concerted effort to make sure that nothing got outside of gold that would distract those guys. And it would have been equally true at a public or like Celebrity Center, where those guys up there, there's no way they would have known. They would not have known about it until it became a legal issue. Then they would have to know about it. You know, on a local level, it would be like, well, let's get Alfredi Johnson and a check for $400,000 and we'll shut her up. There would be stuff like that. So that's just, I'm hoping that just to kind of foster a better understanding. I mean, here, I'll give you another example. In all of the time that I experienced Miscavige or worked with him or spent time working with him, I never saw him watch the internet. I never saw him watch YouTube. The guy doesn't even carry a cell phone. The only time I ever saw him look at the internet was if he was checking, the Scientology sites that a lot of us were working on. Like, this is a guy, he reads reports. So he gets a report from Celebrity Center. It's not going to mention Danny Masterson. It's just going to talk about whatever it has to talk about to keep that stuff from getting out. So even he is siloed by the discretionary powers of the people writing the reports that are going to him. So it's the culture of the Sea Org and Scientology is very, very different. When somebody says, "Oh, well, all those people knew," I mean, the one person that probably knows the most is Miscavige, because he has so many little spies on the ground in his organization to like find these things out. Hold on one second. I just have to let my kid know that I'm streaming. So if y'all have any questions about that, please feel free to ask. Okay, so yeah, that's what that deal is. So yeah, there's not a lot of people here. I don't really care. They can catch it on the replay. And hello, CO Bilf. Thank you for showing up. I really appreciate it. CO Bilf says, if I ever pretend to be a shadow geocrim, it's just Andy Kaufman valence. Well, that might be an insult to Andy Kaufman, who was a comedy genius. But yeah, I get what you mean. So without any further ado, I'm going to read. This is a short chapter. I wanted to just kind of, I got a couple of, I don't know about this. That's CO Bill says no leaf falls from a tree without Simone Boulevard knowing. In the case of Scientology, that's not totally true, because things are so siloed. Even Miscavige, to some degree, is siloed from a lot of information. So, because it's like so much stuff happens that nobody wants to tell him. If they don't include in reports, and sometimes the only way he finds out about something is because it ends up in the paper, or it ends up like Danny Masterson, or it ends up as a police matter. So when you hear somebody say that a person at the top had to know because they were in charge, that's not true. They were just in this everybody's in their own bubble in Scientology. It's absolutely insane. Okay, so this is chapter 9, and it's called the LRH Life Exhibition. And this is, hello, Ryan. Hello from Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. Thanks for showing up, Ryan. If you haven't subscribed and you feel that this content is worthwhile, please do. Haven't been doing a lot lately. I've been trying to stay away from all the controversy in the anti-Scientology space. Plus, I've got projects going on, and I have looking for a place to live and all kinds of crazy stuff. But I wanted to read this thing because it's this was the first project that I did. I think it was maybe 92. I think I have it. Yeah, 1992. It's at that building on Hollywood Boulevard. It's called the Hollywood Guarantee Building. It's Scientology's middle management building. Oh, you know what? 1 second, guys. I'm going to be I'm going to be, I've got to just handle one thing real quick. Oh, did you get in? So, sorry, I don't remember locking it. God, it's so embarrassing. I locked my kid out. Okay, good. So, yeah, so I did this. I was, I was at Gold and I was going to do these. I'd agreed to do these 7 films, and that's what I was going to do. And then all of a sudden, I get a call one day to go down to the HGB and look at the LRH Life exhibition. That story's in here. The exhibition, it basically covers all of these phony careers that Hubbard supposedly had, which he never had. I mean, there's a little bit of truth to all of them. Like, yeah, he flew a glider, and yeah, he worked in Hollywood for about 10 minutes. And so the chapter doesn't cover any of that because a lot of that stuff has been covered brilliantly, like in Bald-Faced Messiah, the book. There's a bunch of great stuff about that. So what I covered in this chapter is my own personal experience. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to take a sip of water, and without further ado, I'm going to read this. Okay, so here we go. This is Chapter 9, LRH Life Exhibition. Sometime in 1992, the next crisis arrived. Okay, so that's in reference to a previous chapter. I was working on a film, and then all of a sudden we were all taken off the film to produce this gold video for the ship. And it was just an absolute, like a Baton death march. I never experienced anything about it. And I'd been through some pretty stressful production stuff before I worked for Gold. Okay. Hey, Ryan M., thanks for letting me know. A longtime subscriber. Thank you for reading and describing your book for us. You're very welcome. Okay. So that was in reference to that. So sometime in 1992, the next crisis arrived. I received an urgent message from Miscavige asking that I inspect the ongoing progress of the LRH Life exhibition, which was under construction at street level in the Scientology Management Building on Hollywood Boulevard, located in the old Guarantee Building, known to Scientologists as the HGB. Plagued with shoddy work and cost overruns, the construction of the exhibition was hopelessly behind. This was the first of many times I was asked to drop everything to solve some disaster. Calling it a disaster was putting it mildly, as most of it had to be torn out and redone. The only component of the exhibition that had been completed was a life-sized animatronic tableau of a scene from Battlefield Earth featuring the hero and villain facing off. It looked like something out of a cheap carnival sideshow, a portent of how awful the film version would turn out years later, and for which the film's screenwriter, J.D. Shapiro, would write a 2-page apology for penning the suckiest movie ever. That's an actual quote. So I got to check one thing. And also, let me just remind you, if you have a question, I'll stop anytime. Even if you have a comment, just make sure you write question or comment, and I will we'll take a look at it. I just got to check one thing here. Okay, good. Okay, here we go. We're going to continue on. I was put in charge of getting the exhibition back on track and spent much of that year doing nothing else. Okay, so I was hoping to be done with the films that year and just get back to doing what I was doing. And that never happened because then I ended up doing this project for the rest of the year. I was put in charge of getting the exhibition back on track and spent much of the year doing nothing else. So much for my 7-month commitment to completing the tech films. In particular, the display covering Narconon was a catastrophe. The centerpiece of the Narconon display was planned to be a widescreen film showing the scourge of drugs in society, followed by a lively tour of the Narconon program. Okay, so I have a whole nother chapter devoted to Narconon, but we're going to get into a little bit of Narconon in this chapter, because most of the time I spent on the exhibition was in making a film for Narconon, this propaganda film. I wish I had a copy of it. So anyway, okay, so the centerpiece of the Narconon display was planned to be a widescreen film showing the scourge of drugs on society, followed by a lively tour of the Narconon program, its history, facilities, and successes. To achieve a widescreen effect, an outside firm had sold the exhibition planners on the idea of placing 3 50-inch projection TVs, state of the art for the time, next to one another and projecting a single video across the 3 screens. Okay, so the irony is today you can buy 3 screens and you can just feed a video signal into it and push a button and it'll spread it across 3 screens. But that back then, that technology didn't exist. Becky USA is here. Thank you very much for showing up. Nice to see you again. And yeah, so there were like 3, like remember these 50-inch Pioneer projection TVs. So the idea was to take 3 of those, so you'd have a really massively wide screen. But and then anyway, you'll get the point. So to place them next to one another and projecting a single video across the 3 screens, by the time I was assigned to the project, all they had to show were 3 expensive television sets and no video. The outside vendor, despite being paid tens of thousands of dollars, could not figure out how to solve the technical challenge of projecting a single video across 3 screens. I mean, I saw so much of this crap in the years that I worked for the church, and these horrific, I don't know how you say it, these kind of horrific fiascos where they would hire some vendor who probably was aware of how stupid they were. Well, yeah, sure, we can do that. Never really asking, like, could you give us a proof of concept or anything like that? I used to joke that working for them was like running in a slow horse race. It was like sounds like I'm bragging. It's like entering a thoroughbred in a slow race, because it's just like, it's just because you're the smartest guy in the room doesn't mean you're smart. It just means you're the smartest guy in the room. So anyway, I've been on a diet. I lost a lot of weight, so my clothes are like kind of baggy. I've got to yeah. Plus, I was on that COVID diet for a few weeks. Not a lot of fun, but you will lose some weight. So okay, let's carry on here. So the outside vendor, blah blah blah. Oh, they wanted more money. I told church management to cut their losses, tear the entire thing out, and start over. I proposed hiring a company known for shooting widescreen film presentations for special installations at museums and amusement parks. Their system employed a super widescreen film format using modified film cameras. I don't know if this is interesting to anybody, but when I was writing this, I really just wanted to get the story down, like everything that happened before I forgot it all. Using modified film cameras with the final result displayed via a custom projector. The deal included 2 projectors and a maintenance contract for a fraction of what they had already wasted on the 3 TV idea. The film was produced and installed. So if anybody's interested in the technology of it, so this particular system, it used 35 millimeter film, but like a 35 millimeter film frame has 4 perforations. Remember, it runs vertically, and it has 4 perforations. Standard 35 millimeter film frame for motion pictures. So what this was, it was a 2 perforation. In other words, it was the height of 2 perforations. So imagine slicing, like taking a full 35 millimeter frame, like so, and then just using half of it, horizontally. You'd get a very wide frame. And so they had special cameras and special projectors. But one of the advantages, as I'm about to tell you, is that because it's on film, it's infinitely, like, it's very upgradable. Like when digital happened, you could transfer to digital without losing any quality. Okay, so it also had the advantage of being shot on film, so it could easily be converted to a digital format as technology advanced. The opening sequence of the Narconon film called for recreating a drug bust, featuring cops breaking down the door of a suspected drug dealer's house, complete with gun-wielding perps being shot and a fleeing suspect jumping through a plate glass window. Yeah, it was a fun day. While the Church of Scientology may claim to be the world's leading authority on drug prevention and rehabilitation, it established its international base in Gilman Hot Springs, adjacent to the methamphetamine capital of Southern California. Hemet. Like, you don't really hear people talk about this. Like, what is the presence of Scientology within the city where it is located, where Golden Era Productions is located? And they have no presence there. There's no Scientology there. And what's worse is, and I did not know this until I actually worked on this film, is that Hemet was at that time, and very well likely may still be, the methamphetamine capital of Southern California. So you had this horrific drug problem going on right outside the gates of Gold. And Peter Anderson, hey, Pete, or Peter, how you doing, man? So this was he asked, what year was this? This was 1992. Okay, and so thus, I didn't have to travel far from the Gold Base to find a location that could serve as a drug dealer's house. I settled on a decrepit 2-story Carpenter Gothic with peeling paint and dead landscaping, with most of the picket fence busted out. Literally, we're driving around looking for a house to use as a location, and I saw this house, and I went, oh, that one, that looks just like a drug dealer. Like I was typecasting the house. It looked just like a drug dealer's house. Okay. The staff member responsible for public relations, whose personal wardrobe, despite her holding a public-facing position at Gold, was always at least 20 years out of date. You might have seen her on some of the protest videos when people go out there. It's not Kathy, what's her name? The legal person. I'll remember her name. That's why I like to do these things with Mark Headley, because he has got the most amazing memory. He remembers everybody. He remembers everything about everybody. Okay, so her wardrobe was at least 20 years out of date. Had the harebrained idea to contact the local narcotics division of the Hemet police and ask them to participate in our mock drug bust. Likely, she did this as a way of safe pointing the local narcs. Safe pointing is a Scientology tactic that calls for developing friendly relations with any type of authority, especially local authority. After all, Scientology runs the Narconon drug rehab program. So, of course, the local police would want to help. I'm being sarcastic. Narconon boasts an 80% success rate. 80% of those who complete the program are drug-free a year later. When you consider that most people who enter the program never finish, the claimed 80% is in reality a far smaller number. And when I say far smaller, I mean like really teeny. As for outcomes beyond a year, no figures exist. Drug rehab is a dangerous business. It is estimated that approximately 1,300 drug rehab facility-related deaths occur a year. That's based on a 2015 figure. I couldn't find any figures later than 2015, but still 1,300 people a year. Narconon has had its share of those deaths. The public relations officer's invitation to the local narcotics unit was likely also motivated by money, as she had asked them to volunteer their time free of charge to consult on and participate in the fake bust. Hold on one second. Okay, good. We're fine. Okay, Sea Org members responsible for spending money, whether to feed staff, buy film, hire actors, or pay for location services, are under intense pressure to spend as little as they can get away with or risk being accused of wasting funds. Considered a serious crime in Scientology. Okay, so a phrase that I would hear all the time at Gold was wasting parishioner dollars, right? Like it was like this big deal. Like, you spent what? Don't you know you wasted parishioner dollars, the hard-earned dollars of parishioners? Meanwhile, as you have all heard, I'm sure David Miscavige is paying, PIs $10,000 a week and hiring lawyers $1 million a year and like crazy stuff. Even with film crew members, each being paid only $50 a week at most, the Cine division, which is what they call the filmmaking unit at Goldis, the Cine division, needed considerable sums of money for production. A committee of division heads convened weekly to dole out funds, would haggle over their division's weekly budgets. The combined budget for the organization would then wind its way up the chain of command for final approval. Film budgets were usually reduced to the absolute minimum. This false economy often led to disastrous results, such as a lack of toilet facilities when the crew were shooting on location. At Gold, renting motorhomes or portable restrooms, a necessity even on low budget shoots, was considered a waste of parishioner donations and was only done to prevent a public relations nightmare when hiring professional non Scientologist actors. The crew would end up using facilities at McDonald's or gas stations or at America's de facto public restrooms, Starbucks. Non Scientologist actors were often forced to change wardrobe in the grip truck. I can't remember how many times I apologized for the lack of facilities. I used the excuse that the motorhome had broken down on their way to the location, and we were doing everything we could to get a replacement. All the while, I thought I was helping to improve conditions on Earth, and that by my participation, I could help Gold rise to the level where the crew would be treated with the respect they deserved. Saving money, because I think everybody deserves respect. I mean, these guys weren't abusing anybody; they were just being abused. But that's not totally true. There was a couple of them who ultimately became extremely abusive. Saving money by using volunteer cops in place of hired actors was a recipe for disaster. They are not bound by conventional actor-producer rules, and they could be called away for an emergency at any moment. Not to mention the potential for having live ammo on the set. But no matter, the PR person had procured on-camera talent for free. I met with the lead detective, an undercover narc who could have passed for Serpico's stunt double. He had shoulder-length hair, a thick beard, wearing Levi's and a plaid shirt with a firearm strapped to his hip in a low-slung ballistic nylon holster. He seriously wanted to help, explaining that he was frustrated at having to arrest the same perps over and over, and had been convinced Scientology's drug education and rehabilitation programs might reduce recidivism. One very helpful service he was able to provide was explaining how they went about busting a suspected drug house. So yeah, this was, let me see if there's anything we want to. Yeah, hopefully. Ryan M says, I agree. It would have been great to have included Mark, Rachel, and even Sterling to hear their thoughts. I think in 1992, I don't know if Sterling was at the base yet. He might have been, or if he was still at the ranch. Rachel is so busy, I could barely have dinner with her, let alone do a stream with her. But yeah, they would be great. And Mark, of course. Yeah, I'll have to ask Mark if he wants to join in and do one of these. Because I don't know that he might have worked on this. I don't know, on this Narconon film. It was pretty crazy. Okay, so here we go. Where are we? Okay, this is now getting kind of really hairy. He seriously wanted to help. I read that. Okay, so one very helpful service. So get that I was really thrilled because I had a cop I could talk to and get some direction on how to bust a house. Because it's nice to have consultants around. On the day of the shoot, Serpico arrived with 2 other members of his narcotics unit. He and his undercover clothing, and the others dressed in full tactical camo gear. They looked at the house and chuckled. We busted this place a month ago. Okay, like I just nearly fell over laughing because these 2 guys, these 2 complete Yahoo cowboy local narc dudes, we pull up to the house and they're like, wait a minute, is this the house that we're supposed to bust? Because we busted this place for real a month ago. So anyway, we busted this place a month ago. They popped the truck of their unmarked Crown Vic and pulled their weapons from padded cases. As the script called for one of the perps to be shot while firing a gun at the cops, a motion picture armorer was hired to handle the weapons, along with the special effects makeup artist to handle the bullet hits. One of the cops was holding a long-barreled shotgun and the other a small machine gun with a silencer. The armorer, concerned there might be firearms on the set that were not under his control, immediately came over to brief the cops that their weapons must be unloaded and that no live ammunition would be allowed anywhere in the set. The cops did not. They kept their guns loaded. Violating this would cost the armorer his license to handle weapons in the film industry, not to mention endangering the cast and crew. The armorer was particularly interested in the machine gun. He'd never seen that model. The cop proudly explained that it was a recent addition to the weapons used by special forces and was only available to military and law enforcement. Apparently, it takes a while. Apparently, it takes a while for such advanced firearms to trickle down to the movies. I asked him about the silencer. He explained that drug dealers and meth labs often have guard dogs that you had to take out before going in. He aimed low and pretended to make a sound like a silenced round being fired. Turning to his partner, he said, "Hey, you remember last week we took out that dog and it turned out to be the wrong house?" They both chuckled. I mean, these guys were sadistic. They were laughing about the fact that they'd killed this old woman's dog. They were like, "Oh, I'm sorry, wrong house. Sorry about your dog." Despite the narcs' offer to use despite the narcs' offer to use a live shotgun round called an Avon charge, Avon calling, to blow the lock off the front door, the usual procedure law enforcement followed in such operation. The day's filming came off without incident. I don't know if I explained that well enough, but and some of you, especially if you're old as I am, there used to be this, there's this company, it's kind of like an MLM. It's called Avon Makeup, and women sell it. They go door to door. And they used to do these TV ads, and you'd hear a doorbell ring, ding dong, Avon calling, meaning it was your friendly Avon makeup salesman at the front door. So these cops, the guy with the big long shotgun, he pulled a charge out of his vest. It was like had a clay plug in it, and he's like, because I was saying, okay, how do you open the door? How do you breach the door? And he said, well, I use this Avon charge, Avon calling, and they blow the lock out. And he was going to do it, and the armorer, who would have lost his license if anybody found out that there was ammo on the set, was just utterly freaking out because this guy was just dying to blow the lock off that door. So anyway, but in spite of all that craziness, it came off without a hitch. Okay, so yeah, it was pretty funny. The guy, I said, so what do you do when you walk up to the door? And he says, we do this. And he tapped as quietly as you can with your flashlight, like this. Police, open up. And then they kick the door open because legally they have to announce their presence. So they whisper it. They go, police, knock, knock, open the door. And then boom, they blow the lock off and they all go in and they start shooting people. It's pretty crazy. Okay, so from the church's perspective, the Life exhibition was a smashing success. It met its deadline, and it opened with a huge celebration, replete with ribbon cutting, and fireworks. At least for a while, it seemed to do well, competing with other Hollywood Boulevard attractions. I always thought having an exhibition dedicated to L. Ron Hubbard, located on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, positioned it with the kitschy attractions such as Madame Tussauds Wax Museum and Ripley's Believe It or Not, just another tourist trap vying for the attention of sightseers in flip-flops and cargo pants. A few blocks down the street at the Chinese Theater, you could sign up for a tour of the stars' homes, including, of course, the dead ones, get your photo taken with a celebrity impersonator, or experience the life of Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. A stone's throw from the intersection of Hollywood and Vine, next door to a strip club, the Church of Scientology had planted its flagship exhibition as though it were just another tourist trap, bookending the Hollywood Walk of Fame with author services to the west and the Life exhibition to the east, did nothing to help the reputation of the religion or its founder. Though it briefly shined in the 90s, it would sink like the proverbial lead balloon by the decade's end. And I should qualify when I say briefly shined in the 90s. That was because, Jeff Hawkins had managed to sell 10 million Dianetics books in the late 80s. And then that created a sort of a trickle up effect. And then, of course, that all got wiped out when people found out what a horrible thing Scientology is. Okay, we're almost done here. With the successful completion of a few training films and now the Life exhibition, I had become Miscavige's trusted hired hand. On the one hand, it seemed I could do no wrong. On the other hand, I was being absorbed into a machine that would be nearly impossible to escape. Working with the Sea Org, I was beginning to experience the same fate as its members, having no identity outside of my job. Like them, I was being reduced to a sum total of the work I did for Scientology. Nothing else mattered or counted. not family, not social life, not personal identity. When you are constantly treated as though your job is your identity, after a while, you begin to believe it. Okay, good. So that's the Elrich Life Exhibition. Anybody has any questions? We'll take a look at it just as a little bit of a preview. This next chapter, it's also a short one. I'm going to try to do it in the next couple of days. It's called Walk Out Like You Own the Place. It's about the IRS, the tax, some work I did theoretically helping them get tax exemption that I really want to expose. There's some information in that chapter that nobody has ever discussed outside of science. Like, it just blows my mind. But there was things that Scientology did, that Miscavige did. We all know about the thousands of lawsuits that he filed against the IRS. We all know about the investigation of personal investigation of the personal lives of IRS agents. We know about this stuff, but he did something else that's never been discussed. And I was part of it. I was a witness to it, and I'm going to expose it in this next chapter. So that being said, Patrick Skinner wants to, okay, so he says Corinne Pau spelling. I'm not sure if that's to me, but I can tell you it's KARIN PAUW, Pau. It's Corinne Pau. It's French, but anyway, for what it's worth, if you want her phone number, I'd be happy to give it to you. Oh, they're going to change it. I have her phone number in my book, but now that I've said that on YouTube, I'm sure they're going to change her phone. They're going to grab her phone and change it. I don't think it's legal to be handing out people's phone numbers on YouTube, so I'm not going to do it. I think that's you get your channel taken down for that kind of stuff. So this says funny about the house, poor dog. Yeah. Okay. So Ryan M says funny about the house, not the poor dog. Yeah. Okay. So my son was he very nicely took the dog out for a walk, and somehow the door got locked, but there was a back door that was still open. And Peter Anderson wants to know, was I still married in 92? I got married in 92, I think. Yeah, in 92. So I was married from 92 to, that's when I got married. Till 2013 or something like that. So let me back up and see if I missed anything. I don't think so. I've got all of 11 very interested and loyal, faithful followers. I really appreciate it. I'm going to try to get these chapters done. I'm editing chapter 21 of the book, the audiobook. So that's kind of moving along. And here's a good question. Usually when a person says good question, it means they need a minute to think about it. It does not discuss my family or personal life. And there's a disclaimer I've read earlier in the book about exactly why I left them out of it, because it's about my interaction with Scientology. It's not, that's just a different story. It's also a lot of it's their story, and out of respect for them and their privacy, I didn't want to talk about it. Plus, we had like most families in Scientology, there's a lot of chaos because your main sort of magnetic pole of interaction is the church. And it creates a lot of chaos. Plus, I wasn't the best husband, father, whatever. I pretty much intermittently abandoned my kids for, to work for Scientology. I thought I was saving the world for them. I was also not, shall we say, always loyal to my wife in some ways or whatever. That's a whole story. And it's just like, it's not this story. Someday I may write another book. I can tell you my former wife is a terrific person. I've got nothing against her, that's for sure. I'm trying to think what else I can say about that. I specifically left it out because of their because it wasn't like I was going home every night anyway. I was mostly up at Gold, and then I'd come home on weekends or whatever. So there was a lot of most of my life during that whole time was my interaction with the church. So, but if you have any specific questions about my family, I'd be happy to at least try and answer them, entertain them. Let me just put this up again because it says, or personal life. I mean, that was my personal life for all of that time. I mean, I'm sure I did things in my personal life that I'm not going to necessarily put in a book because everybody, like when you write a memoir, you don't have to be 100% transparent. Just don't lie about anything. Like there's nothing in my book that I lied about. Like if you're going to talk about your marriage and you cheated on your wife, you got to say you cheated on your wife. If you're not going to talk about your marriage, don't. It's not particularly relevant to the story. And I'm not saying that that's part of my private life, and therefore it's hands off. At some point, I'm sure I'll get into it more, but I tried to include some things, and then it was it was difficult. Like I know when I was writing the book, I was sharing it with my older son, who's extremely literate and he's a really big reader and a good writer himself. And listening to his objections, he's like, you really shouldn't put this in there, or you don't really have this right. I was like, this is complicated because you're talking about four people who all experience things from a different perspective. So, but I don't think, so Becky USA says, your family privacy is so important. We don't need to know unless you want to share a story or two. Yeah, I may at some point. It's not all that relevant to exposing Scientology. Anyway, I'm just going to leave it at that. So OBG Foster said, late to the party, was listening to the convention. Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't realize that I scheduled this during the convention. So I'm going to have to go catch up on that. And no, we're not playing politics. We can talk about politics some other time, but I watch both of the conventions. So, and I think you all pretty much have a pretty good idea of where my politics are at. So anyway, that's pretty much the deal. Anybody got anything else? Nothing about the life exhibition? Did you guys hear the story about, I guess, when Lisa Marie took Michael Jackson there when she was married to him, and he went in there. He spent about 30 seconds in there and he ran out because the place creeped him out so much. But other than that, I don't really have a lot of stories about the life exhibition other than being there and working on it. And, like I said, there's a lot of these stories, a lot of the stories about him, the myths about him, him being the youngest Eagle Scout and, being, this aviator who was barnstorming and, blah, 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 and his maritime adventures and his photography and, and even to some degree his writing. These things were all so exaggerated and lied about, but they've been covered so well in other books that I just wanted to tell this story about my involvement. Okay, good. So before we go, that was so short. I was going to do like 2 chapters, but I'm going to do the other one within the next couple of days. I'll do the one about the IRS, which has really got some great stuff in it. And so, look, I have, you can visit my merch store. I've got some stuff there. Most notably, I've got autographed copies of my book. Hold on one second. I'm just going to grab something. Just hold on 1 second. Thanks, guys. So this is the super Ligera version of the book. You can't get this on Amazon. You can order it through Barnes and Noble or any bookstore, or you can get it on my merch store. And this is like a real copy, like a hardback with a printed jacket and an actual dust cover. And you can get one of these autographed, and I will be happy to send it to you. Just go to my merch store. And it came out really nice. So there's that. And let me see, what else do we got here? I got to do a little advertising. I'm really bad about that. So if you haven't subscribed, please do. If you want to support me directly, you can at mitchbrisker@gmail.com is my PayPal address. But that's just for PayPal. If you want to reach me otherwise, reach me at Scientology@gmail.com. And I've got this thing here. I've got a buymeacoffee.com /Mitch Brisker. If you want to help me support my journey to hold Scientology responsible, that would be fantastic. And okay, so OBG Foster's made a comment here. He said hagiography is more effective to ensure with RT to ensure. I'm not sure what you totally mean, but you're saying something about a hagiography, which is, yeah. So a hagiography is basically the autobiography of a famous like religious person. And Hubbard was very concerned with his hagiography. And yeah, you could say that all of that fictional stuff is kind of fits into that that kind of deal, but there's in the film orientation, which there's a chapter coming up about that film. I've spoken a lot about how Hubbard positioned himself as a religious leader and about how he positioned Scientology as a religion. And I think you're going to really enjoy that. I mean, we're starting to get into some of the real meaty stuff. Okay, so Becky wants to know, why does it take so long to create an audible version? Just curious. Okay, I got it. You're getting a little frustrated because I haven't finished it yet. No, you didn't mean it that way. It doesn't take that long. If I could have just walked into a studio every day for 8 hours a day, I could have done it in 2 weeks. But because I'm doing this completely myself, and I'm doing it in this, this makeshift but very effective homemade recording booth. When you do everything, when you have to do the recording, you have to do the editing, you have to do the direction, and you're the talent, it's incredibly time consuming. And I'm doing it at home. I have a dog who can be very noisy, so I have to pick these slots. And I don't have unlimited resources, so I've had to stop a number of times to make some money where I just couldn't spend the time. So it's taken so long to satisfy your curiosity because I'm doing it myself. It shouldn't take that long. I think Mike Grinder told me it took him like 2 or 3 weeks to do his book, but he showed up at a studio every day for 8 hours. He read, he went home. He didn't have to stop and make notes and do pickups and do editing. He didn't have to do any of that. It takes me a few hours to record a chapter, and it takes a few days to edit it and finish it. So it's very time consuming. And I hear my dog making noise outside the door, and that's one of the problems. Okay, so Pete Anderson, yeah, I saw that. I'll get back to you on your email. Thank you very much. Fat fingers on a small phone. Yeah, I get it. I have the same problem. Yeah, you're welcome, Becky. Yeah, the bunker booth. Yeah, the blanket fort booth. Yeah, it's been a trip to do it. I think by the time I've completed 7 chapters, I'd cycled through it, those first 7, maybe 3 or 4 times, that I kept redoing them because I wasn't happy with the performance. I hadn't found a good cadence yet. I think it's still far less. It's not as good as it could have been if I had like a whole team working on it, but it's just going to take a long time. Okay, so that's pretty much the deal. And Weston is starting to make a lot of noise, and everybody wants to get back to watching watching the thing. So listen, I really appreciate you're all showing up, especially those of you who stuck around and watched a lot of this. And we're going to go out with a little message from my dog. So thank you again very much. I'll be back shortly within the next couple of days, and we'll do the next one. You do not want to miss the next one, Walk Out Like You Own the Place, because it's, like I said, it has some information about the battle with the IRS that nobody has ever discussed or ever divulged. And it blows my mind. So thank you very much. And I will see you guys. Oh!